I fought for my life in surgery while my family celebrated my sister's engagement. So I erased myself from their lives completely. Months later, when their world fell apart, they found only silence. I nearly died on an operating table. The lights were blinding, the alarms were screaming, and my body was shutting down. Yet, less than 10 miles away, my family stayed at my sister's engagement party. They toasted. They danced. They ate cake. Months later, when they finally decided they needed me, I was already gone. Not dead, but gone from their lives. After they removed the plastic hospital wristband, I had a pale, white ring around my wrist for several weeks. Even now, years later, sometimes I catch myself stroking that spot with my thumb, searching for something that is no longer there. It's strange how even the tiniest physical reminders can outlive the most severe emotional pain. Or perhaps, it is the other way around. My name is Elena, and I nearly died on a Thursday. But the story didn't start on that Thursday. It began 4 months earlier, with what I assumed was just the price of being successful. I was working as a marketing director for a major pharmaceutical firm in Boston. The hours were brutal. The pressure was constant. So, when my stomach started aching in late August, I blamed it on too much black coffee and too little sleep. By the time the agony became unbearable, I had gaslight myself into believing it wasn't serious. The irony wasn't lost on me. I worked for a company that manufactured cutting-edge diagnostic technology, yet I couldn't diagnose my own deteriorating health. Then, there was my sister, Mia. Mia was the sun our family orbited around. Younger, brighter, louder. She had graduated from Harvard, landed a job at a prestigious financial firm in Manhattan, and was newly engaged to William, a man whose family basically owned half of Connecticut. My parents, Robert and Eleanor, had spent the previous 7 months treating Mia's engagement party as if it were a royal coronation. Since March, my life had been a soundtrack of flower arrangements, live orchestras, and a guest list that read like the Forbes 500. Every Sunday dinner at my parents' home in Cambridge was a strategic planning session. I would sit there, nodding along, while my mother obsessed over centerpieces and my father debated the merits of Pinot Noir versus Cabernet. "Elena, you're definitely coming early," my mother had stated during one of these dinners. It wasn't a question. It was a command. "Mia is looking forward to seeing you." Of course, I had answered, pushing peas around my plate as my stomach clenched in a knot of dull fire. I wouldn't miss it. The gala was slated for December 1st. My body had already booked my emergency surgery for the same night, but I didn't know that yet. The ache got worse in October. I saw my doctor twice. The first time? "It's stress, Elena. Take some acid reflux meds." The second time? She requested an ultrasound. It showed something wrong near my appendix, but it wasn't definitive. She sent me to a specialist, but the earliest appointment was 4 weeks out. "If the pain becomes intolerable," she told me, "go to the ER. Do not wait." I nodded, took my meds, and went back to work. Looking back, I see how idiotic that was. But when you're living in the situation, everything seems manageable, until the moment it isn't. I was popping ibuprofen like they were breath mints, answering emails, and pretending I wasn't falling apart because in my family, sickness was equated with weakness. My boyfriend, Mark, noticed. We'd been together 3 years, living in my Back Bay apartment. "You're not eating, Elle," he said one night, watching me push pasta away. "You look gray." Mark was an architect. He was practical, kind, and deeply worried. But he had to leave for a project in Seattle the week before the gala. We chatted on the phone, and I downplayed the pain. I lied to him. I didn't want him worrying from 2,500 miles away. Then came December 1st. The morning started in hell. I woke up at 5 a.m. and spent 20 minutes on the bathroom floor, gripping the porcelain, trying not to vomit because the pain was so acute it felt like a knife twisting in my side. I called in sick to work, something I never did. I spent the day curled in a fetal position on my sofa, a heating pad pressed against my ribs, praying for it to pass. At 3 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was my mother, Eleanor. "Elena," she said, skipping the hello. "Please tell me you're getting ready. The gala starts at 7, and you know how Mia gets when people are late." "Mom," I rasped. My voice was weaker than I intended. I'm truly not feeling well. I think I might have to miss tonight." The silence on the other end was so long I checked to see if the call had dropped. "You're joking," she finally said. Her tone had dropped 10 degrees. "Elena, this is your sister's engagement gala. She has been planning this for months." "I understand," I said, squeezing my eyes shut as a wave of nausea hit me. "But I'm in a lot of agony. My stomach, it's getting worse." "You have always been overly theatrical about being sick," my mother snapped. Her words sliced through the phone. "Remember when you thought you had mono in high school and it was a cold? Or the ski trip where you screamed you broke your ankle and it was a sprain? Mom, this is different. It's always different with you, Elena. You feel a twinge, and it escalates into a medical emergency." She sighed, that specific, irritated sigh she had mastered over 20 years. "Take some Tylenol and pull yourself together. Your sister needs you. We all do. Don't disgrace us by being the only family member who fails to show up." The guilt hit me instantly. It was her weapon of choice. "I'll try," I whispered. "You will do more than try. Be there by 6:30. We need photos before the guests arrive." She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling the pain pulse in waves. Was she right? Was I being dramatic? I forced myself up. By 6 p.m., I had convinced myself I could survive a few hours. I put on the cocktail dress I'd bought for the event. I applied layers of blush to hide my ghostly complexion. I called a ride-share. Every bump in the road on the way to the botanical gardens felt like a gunshot to my torso. The venue was stunning, I have to admit. Thousands of fairy lights draped over the glass greenhouse structure. Mia looked like a movie star in her champagne gown. William stood next to her, looking rightly proud. My parents were holding court near the entrance, shaking hands with the social elite. "Elena." Finally, my father, Robert, boomed when he saw me. "We were beginning to suspect you'd skip your own sister's big night." "I told you she'd come," my mother said, air-kissing my cheeks without actually touching them. "Though you look pale, sweetheart. Put on some lipstick before the photographer gets here." I made it through the family portraits, leaning heavily against a stone pillar between shots. I made it through the first hour, clutching a glass of ginger ale, avoiding the food because the smell of shrimp made the room spin. Around 9 p.m., the pain changed. It went from a dull roar to a screaming siren. I found my mother near the bar. "Mom," I said, grabbing her arm. "I need to go home. Something is horribly wrong." She looked at me with barely veiled annoyance, scanning the room to see if anyone was watching us. "Elena, we haven't even done the toasts yet. Can you just hang on for another hour?" "I don't think I can," I said through gritted teeth. "It hurts to breathe." "Then sit somewhere quiet," she hissed. "There's a bench in the orchid room. But you absolutely cannot leave until Mia and William cut the cake. It would destroy her." She turned away to greet a senator's wife. Dismissed. I stumbled to the orchid room. It was empty, cool, and quiet. I sat on the bench, leaning forward because sitting up straight felt like tearing a muscle. Through the glass walls, I could see the party. The laughter. The music. Mia shining in the center of it all. And then, it happened. At 9:15 p.m., something inside me exploded. It wasn't just pain. It was a white-hot flash that blinded me. I tried to stand up, to call for help, but I collapsed. I don't remember much after hitting the floor. Fragments come back to me in nightmares. The cold tile against my cheek. The metallic taste of copper in my mouth. A stranger screaming, "Oh my God, someone help her." The roof of the greenhouse spinning as they loaded me onto a stretcher. Later, much later, one of Mia's friends told me what it looked like. I had been lying on the orchid room floor in a pool of blood. My appendix hadn't just ruptured, it had been leaking for days, turning septic, and when it finally burst, the infection flooded my system instantly. My champagne dress was soaked scarlet. As the paramedics worked on me, the party came to a standstill. Guests were gawking. And my parents? They were annoyed. According to the friend, my mother actually said to my father, could she really not have held on until after the cake cutting? I was rushed to Massachusetts General Hospital. The doctors discovered my abdominal cavity was filled with infection and internal bleeding. I was in septic shock. The surgery lasted 5 hours. I flatlined twice on the table. The surgeon later told Mark, who had boarded the first flight back from Seattle the moment the hospital called him, that I was minutes away from death. And where was my family while I was bleeding out? They were still at the garden. After the ambulance left, my parents told the guests I had a minor medical episode but was being treated. They insisted the party continue. The toasts were made. The cake was sliced. The orchestra played until midnight. Not a single member of my family came to the hospital that night. I woke up 40 hours later in the ICU. I was intubated, hooked up to so many machines I looked like a cyborg. Mark was sleeping in a recliner next to my bed, still wearing his travel clothes. When I opened my eyes, he jumped up, tears streaming down his face, holding my hand while I tried to remember why I was there. My parents finally visited on the third day. I had been moved to a regular room, but I was still on 4 different antibiotics and heavy painkillers. They walked in at 3 p.m. My mother was carrying a small, sad bouquet of grocery store flowers. "Elena, thank God you're all right," she said, placing the flowers on the windowsill. "You gave us quite a scare." My father stood by the door, looking uncomfortable. "The doctor says you'll make a full recovery." I looked at them. The drugs made my head fuzzy, but not fuzzy enough to miss the lack of warmth in their eyes. "You didn't come," I rasped. My throat was raw from the breathing tube. "I nearly died, and you didn't come." My mother busied herself arranging the cheap flowers. "The doctor told us you were in surgery and there was nothing we could do. It seemed more feasible to stay with Mia. She was very upset about what happened." I stared at her. "You mean, she was upset I ruined her party?" My mother's face hardened. "That is unjust, Elena. Your sister was concerned. But certainly, your timing was poor. Do you have any idea how much that gala cost? How many important people were there?" William's parents were appalled by the chaos. I felt something inside me fracture. It wasn't a bone. It was the tether that had bound me to them for my entire life. "I nearly died," I repeated. "But you didn't," my father said from the doorway, checking his watch. "The doctor saved you. Everything turned out fine. There is no need to be so melodramatic about it." Melodramatic. There was that word again. "I need you to leave," I whispered. "Elena, don't be childish," my mother started. "Get out," I said. Louder this time. "Both of you." They exchanged a look, that shared look of she's being difficult again. "Fine," my mother sniffed. "We'll come back when you're feeling more sensible. Clearly, the medication is affecting your emotions." After they left, I cried for the first time. Mark held me, careful not to pull my stitches, and let me weep until I passed out. Mia texted me 4 days later. Mom said you're awake. Glad you're okay. Sorry the timing of everything was so awful. Not, I was scared I lost you. Not, I'm coming to see you. Just sorry about the timing. As if my organ rupturing was a scheduling conflict. I deleted the text without replying. I was in the hospital for 9 days. My best friend, Sarah, took the train up from New York twice. Mark slept in the chair every single night. My coworkers sent huge baskets of fruit and cards. My parents never came back. Mia never visited. On the day I was discharged, my mother called. Mark was helping me tie my shoes because I couldn't bend over. Your father and I think you owe Mia an apology, she announced the moment I answered. I froze. Excuse me? Her engagement gala was intended to be the highlight of her year, Elena. But the entire evening ended up being about you and your medical drama. Several guests left early. The photographer missed the cake cutting because of the ambulance lights. I looked at Mark. He saw the expression on my face and stopped what he was doing. I was dying, Mom, I said, my voice deadly calm. I apologize for inconveniencing the party with my near-death experience. You've always had to make everything about you, she continued, ignoring my sarcasm. Even as a child. You couldn't stand it when Mia got attention. We expect you to come for dinner next Sunday to clear the air. You're right, I said. I am? She sounded surprised. Yes. You're right about one thing. It won't happen again. Good. I'm glad you're finally being rational. We'll see you Sunday. No, Mom. You won't. I hung up. Mark looked at me, fury in his eyes. Did she really just? I nodded. I need you to drive me home. And then. I need to change my number. What are you going to do? Mark asked as we drove away from the hospital. I'm going to let them go, I said. Are you sure? That's permanent. They chose permanent when they stayed at a party while I was flatlining. I'm just respecting their choice. The plan was executed with surgical precision. I didn't want a dramatic confrontation. I wanted peace. I blocked my mother, my father, Mia, and every flying monkey relative who tried to call me to tell me I was being difficult. Christmas was the first test. The annual Matthews Christmas Eve party was sacred. My mother called my old number, which was now disconnected, probably a dozen times. Then she tried Mark. He blocked her too. By January, I had moved to a new apartment in Brooklyn. No one in my family knew the address. I changed my emergency contacts at work. I locked down my social media. I vanished. For the first time in my adult life, I felt light. I didn't realize how heavy their expectations were until I set them down. I started painting again, a hobby my mother had always called a waste of time. My relationship with Mark flourished because I wasn't using him as an emotional shield anymore. 9 months passed in blissful silence. Then, in July, I was at a conference in New York. I stepped into an elevator and ran smack into one of William's cousins. She recognized me instantly. Elena. Oh my God, she said, clutching her chest. How are you holding up? It must be awful with your dad. I stared at her. I'm sorry. What about my dad? Her face fell. Oh, you don't know? Know what? Your father had a massive heart attack 3 days ago. He's at Mount Auburn Hospital in the ICU. I got off on the wrong floor and stood in a hallway, staring at the wall. Of course they had tried to reach me. But they couldn't. I called Mark. Do you want to see him? Mark asked. He's your dad, Elle, regardless of everything. I closed my eyes, remembering the hospital room 9 months ago. Remembering my mother fixing the flowers and telling me I owed my sister an apology while I had a drain tube coming out of my stomach. No, I said. And the realization shocked me. I don't want to see him. I didn't go. I checked the news online. A small article mentioned John Matthews, prominent attorney, stable after a cardiac event. He survived. I went back to my life. 2 months later, in September, almost a year since the gala, I was at a restaurant in Cambridge with Mark, celebrating my promotion. I looked up from my menu, and there she was. Mia. She was standing 3 tables away. She saw me, and her face cycled through surprise, confusion, and then pure, unadulterated rage. She marched over to our table. Elena, she spat. Where the hell have you been? I set down my menu. Hello, Mia. Don't you hello me. Dad had a heart attack. A heart attack. And you couldn't even be bothered to visit? Mom and Dad have been trying to find you for a year. You cut us off like we're nothing. Her voice was rising. People were staring. I didn't know, I said calmly. I blocked your numbers. That's sick. You're sick. What is wrong with you? I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. She was beautiful, perfect, and completely hollow. I nearly died, Mia, I said quietly. On an operating table. While you ate cake. That's not fair, she hissed. We didn't know how serious it was. The ambulance said you were stable. I flatlined twice. The surgeon told Mark I was minutes from death. And no one came. Mia flushed red. You texted me days later to apologize for the timing, I added. I didn't know what to say. It was awkward. Awkward, I repeated, tasting the word. My near-death experience was awkward for you. You want to know what's wrong with me, Mia? Nothing. For the first time in my life, absolutely nothing is wrong with me. I'm happy. I have people who care if I live or die. We care. Mia insisted, but the conviction wasn't there. You can't just pretend you don't have a family. I'm not pretending. I'm choosing not to maintain relationships with people who only value me as a prop in their perfect lives. Mia opened her mouth, closed it, and then stormed off. Mark squeezed my hand under the table. You okay? Yeah, I said, taking a sip of wine. I really am. But the final act hadn't happened yet. That came in November. 1 year almost to the day since the gala. My doorman buzzed me. Miss Matthews? There's a Catherine Matthews here to see you. She's crying, ma'am. I hesitated. Then, I told him to send her up. I stood by the open door, arms crossed. My mother stepped off the elevator. She looked smaller. Older. Her perfect hair was messy, and her mascara was smeared. Elena, she choked out. Mom. What are you doing here? How did you find me? Your father, she sobbed. He had another episode yesterday. His heart is failing, Elena. The doctors, they don't think he has much time. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was distant. Like hearing about a stranger on the news. He's asking for you, she wept. He wants to see you before he goes. I looked at this woman who had spent my entire life criticizing me, who had chosen a party over my survival. Why didn't you come? I asked. She looked confused. What? That night. When I was dying. Why didn't you come to the hospital? Elena, please. Your father is dying. Why are we talking about this now? Because it's the only thing that matters, I said. You could have left. You could have cancelled the cake cutting. You could have acted like you loved me more than you loved appearances. But you didn't. We did care. But Mia needed us. It was her night. And that, I said softly, is why I'm not coming. Her face hardened. The sadness evaporated, replaced by the steel I knew so well. So this is it? You're going to let your father die without saying goodbye because of a grudge against a party? You are a cruel, selfish girl. It wasn't about the party, Mom. It was about you showing me exactly where I ranked. And I've accepted that rank. I'm an outsider. And outsiders don't visit deathbeds. You will regret this, she hissed. Maybe. But it will be my regret to carry. Not yours. She left. I watched from my window as she got into a cab. I waited for the guilt to crush me. It never came. My father died 3 days later. I read his obituary in the Boston Globe while drinking coffee in my kitchen. I didn't go to the funeral. Mia left me a voicemail screaming that I had killed him with my selfishness. I deleted it. Life moved on. Mark and I got engaged that spring. We had a small wedding, just friends, his family, and the people who actually showed up for us. A year and a half after the gala, I was walking through Boston Common. I saw a woman sitting on a bench, feeding pigeons. It was my mother. She looked frail. Diminished. I almost walked past. But something made me stop. I sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving a safe distance between us. She looked up. Her eyes widened. She cycled through a dozen expressions before landing on resignation. I'm okay, she said, answering the question I hadn't asked. How are you? I'm well, I said. I got married. Congratulations, she said automatically. To Mark? Yes. We sat in silence, watching the birds fight over crumbs. Mia got married last month, my mother said, staring at the ground. Big wedding. Huge. But, it rained. I hope she's happy, I said. And I meant it. She asks about you sometimes, my mother said. Does she? She feels bad about what happened, my mother whispered. About the gala. I looked at my mother. Does she feel bad that I almost died? Or does she feel bad that my absence made her look bad? My mother didn't answer. She didn't have to. I stood up. Goodbye, Mom. Elena, she called out as I walked away. Can we start over? I paused. I looked back at her, sitting alone on that bench, surrounded by pigeons and the ghost of a family that never really existed. I touched the pale scar on my wrist. No, I said gently. We can't. And I turned around and walked back to my life.